Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Andrew Warren, and for today we have one of the more special videos on my channel, which is all about how I went from having $0 in my Robinhood account to $226,000 in a matter of a year time frame. And that is a perfect exact 365 days. And the reason I haven't put this $244,000, $243,000 number in the title is because it has been a little bit over a year. So this video is all about how I got to this point, some of my mindset ideas and strategies when it comes to investing, and all about the things that I've learned over time and how my strategies have changed. And that has a lot to do with where I'm at now with only owning Tesla stock. But keep in mind, the first stock that I ever owned, aside from the free stock for signing up, was not Tesla stock. And I've actually changed my portfolio pretty significantly over time, in which I used to have, I believe, a 4-stock portfolio. Then it dropped down to 3, and then I got down to 1 here with Tesla. But I want to talk about some of the things that I've learned over this past year and how I was able to achieve this hyper growth with a portfolio in a matter of a year. And keep in mind, not all of this growth that you see here is from Tesla stock. And I also just want to emphasize that this is not only about the money that I've made so far, or technically the unrealized gains, but it's the valuable things that I've learned along the way and what I've discovered that works for me personally and according to my risk tolerance. So with this video, I want to address that in terms of the stocks that I've owned previously and how that changed over time, in addition to talking about initially how I got some of the money that I put into the stock market. So as always, of course, if you enjoy these videos and the transparency, please make sure to smash that like button. It really does help me out. And transparency is one of the major things that I have on this channel as a goal, because I like to just keep it real with you all and tell you all what I'm thinking at different points in times regarding the stock market, and also showing how the portfolio has grown over time. And this isn't for me just to flex. One of the main reasons I do videos on this channel is, of course, I'm really interested in Tesla stock. It's a stock that I own, and I do a lot of research on it anyway, so I like discussing that. But even before all of this Tesla stock discussion, one of the main reasons that I did portfolio updates and things like that is because I want that to be motivating for other investors out there that may be new to the market or simply want to learn more to understand how valuable investing can be. And that's another thing I want to emphasize in this video. Investing has been such a game changer for me, because this is money that would have taken me so long to earn in terms of just normal income. And with compound interest and holding this over the long term, then there's so much potential for tremendous growth in the future. And it gets to that situation where the portfolio, if you have a lot of discipline and dedication and you're able to save aggressively, once you can build a portfolio up to a certain point, then it becomes much easier to make large amounts of money, even with minimal movements, whether that's plus 1 or 2% in one day. Sometimes that can still be thousands of dollars depending on the value of your portfolio. So it just takes a lot of discipline to getting up to that particular amount, and then it becomes smooth sailing from then on. They always say the first 100K is the hardest, and I've really seen that ring true, because after I hit 100K, I reached 200K fairly fast, and then getting to 300K, it seems like it's happening fast as lightning. So I really think that's true in terms of that first 100K being really difficult to get to. I can't remember if I had the 1-year or all-time chart selected, but we are on the all-time chart now. But I started out on Robinhood on December 2nd of 2019. And as you can see, if we can finally get to it here, it says plus $3.45. That was from my free stock. And then I slowly started to deposit money over time. And as it recently hit 1 year of me investing on Robinhood on December 2nd of 2020, as you can see, the portfolio was at a value of $226,504.88. And that was a gain of 120.65%, which equals to $123,853.50 gained in a year. And before we get into all of the different purchases I made, I just want to address how I initially got some money to put into the stock market. As I said, it was a gradual process of me buying some VOO stock here and there. I think that was my first actual purchase. We'll check out the transactions in a minute, but I basically started out with some money in my bank account, and that was probably around $50,000, $45,000, and that came from me working ever since I was in high school. Back then, I did spend some money here and there, but in general, I did manage to save up that much money, and this money came from multiple jobs over time. I started out in high school, and my first job was washing dishes at a local restaurant. And at that point in time, I was taking some college classes in the meantime at high school, and I was washing dishes, and I was also doing content creation as a hobby just because I was having a lot of fun with it, and I was making just a tiny bit of money here and there. Not anything significant at all in terms of the money I was getting from that, but it was pretty much just me doing it as a hobby, and I had fun with it. And addressing the dishwashing job, obviously it's not the most fun job ever. I kind of liked it though, because I was just in the back with the cooks, and I'm like an introvert anyways, and I would probably rather do that than go and serve to people. And it was definitely not the most appealing job, like I said, but for me to be in high school, it just gave me some money here and there. And once I went off to college, I would still do content creation. I would earn very little money by doing that, but I just continued with it because I had a lot of fun with it. And in between college years at the university, I got a different job over the summer, and I never went back to dishwashing after that, but this was a new job for a hiring company, and I would work with the files and terminate the ones that needed to be terminated and deal with the different insurance paperwork and things like that. And I did that over the summer to earn me some extra cash. Keep in mind, all the while I was still doing content creation, and as I got up to, I think, my sophomore year of college, that's when I was really starting to make some solid money with content creation, and I was still loving it. So it was the best of both worlds. I was really passionate about it, and in the meantime, I was still working over the summers at that other job. So I'd basically been doing content creation on YouTube since 2013. Didn't start making really solid money with the content creation until around that sophomore year when it popped off, and I just continued on with that, and I would still do the job over the summers in the meantime with college. But basically, a lot of people always ask me, how did you get that first 45 to 50K? And that came from me just grinding in high school, grinding in college when I had the extra time, and I would just try to save up some of that money. I got a lot better at saving once I started investing, so that's another thing that's been really helpful for me. But that's pretty much where the money came from, just a lot of grinding when I also had to do schoolwork and college work and things like that. And I also got multiple scholarships. That was the only reason that I was able to go to college for free. Otherwise, there's no way that I could have afforded to go to that university that I went to. And that's another thing to address as well. I grew up in a family that was lower middle class. I don't know if I would say lower class, but then again, my parents really kind of tried to hide a lot of that from us. But I always knew growing up that there were people around me that obviously had a lot more money than me. And I was always the kid that unless it was my birthday or Christmas, I just knew by default not to ask for anything because I knew we couldn't afford it. So I would probably say lower middle class, but neither of my parents ever graduated from college. My dad actually went to college for a while, but he never got his full degree. So the way I grew up, money was always tight. And I'm mentioning all of this because it does have a lot to do with my investing strategy, because over time, I pretty much realized, and this came along with experience with investing as well, but I realized the best possible way to move me out of my economic class into a higher class and become wealthy and financially independent and not have to worry about money. I learned that one of the best ways to do that was with the stock market. And I have to admit, me starting out compared to now, there's just so many things that I've learned. With me starting out on December 2nd of 2019, keep in mind I had one prior investment to that, and this was around the month of October of 2019, and I knew that I needed to max out my Roth IRA that year, and that was me with a broker at my bank. He also worked as like a financial advisor, and that kind of worked out to my disadvantage because I kind of came in telling him my plan, and what I wanted to do is invest in an S&P 500 index fund. And of course, this guy was with a credit union, so he was trying to sell these certain funds based off of him getting a commission from it, which he didn't mention until later. I finally decided to buy those funds, and I have to admit, he kind of finessed me a little bit with his sales tactics because I told him multiple times I just wanted to buy some index funds and hold it for the long term. I knew the basics at that point in time, and as you can tell with right now, my strategies have evolved a lot since then, but he kept running the sales tactic on mutual funds, saying that you can get a little bit more return out of this one, and of course, you know, he gets a commission from that. But keep in mind, I have now sold those to put Tesla stock in my Roth IRA. But this is important to mention because this was my first investment ever on October. I didn't put a lot of thought into like picking a specific stock. I just simply put it into that mutual fund, but I wanted to do an index fund, and I kind of let him convince me on that. And I just didn't have time to research stocks and pay a lot of attention to the stock market until I graduated the semester early in college in 2019. And I'm mentioning that because it was actually a major convincing factor of why I started out Robinhood, because I realized that there were much better options out there in which you had a lot more control. And I know that Robinhood doesn't have a Roth IRA, but technically I could have started an account like Fidelity and done it myself. But I eventually downloaded Robinhood just to check it out for myself. I started watching tons of YouTube videos on the stock market, and I would do research. I would check out Investopedia, and I just went all in pretty much that last month as I had finals coming around for college. And then after that, I just kept researching and researching and researching because it was actually really interesting. And I love the idea that I could grow my wealth like that. And I finally had somewhere that I could put my cash from my bank account in. And just to address what I believe is the first stock that I ever purchased, aside from that free stock that I got, as you can see, this is VOO, which is an S&P 500 ETF. And my first purchase was on December 5th, which was $2,868.30. And that was 10 shares at a price of $286.83. And if we take a look at the rest here, I did continue to buy more. So I pretty much just dollar cost averaged and bought a lot more of that. You can also see here that I got got some dividends from this stock, which was another bonus. I was kind of focusing a little bit on dividends as well, in addition to that just typical average growth that I was going for. And as you can see right here on May 22nd, I sold all of these shares, and I sold them at a loss of around $2,000, and I ended up buying Tesla stock and Microsoft stock with those funds, and I've actually made a solid return since then. But I want to address some of the other ones that I bought as well. Now that I take a look at it, it seems like Microsoft was actually the first stock that I ever bought, but I only bought one share. I bought a much more significant amount in VOO. So keep in mind with that, I just bought one share at $148.61 on December 3rd, and then I didn't buy another share of Microsoft until February 5th. So I did buy that a little bit earlier than VOO, but I spent a lot more on VOO when I did make those purchases. The next stock we have here is actually Apple stock, and it seems like I even bought Apple stock earlier than VOO. Keep in mind, it seems like it has been forever since I've taken a look at this, but we're going all the way back here. Now that I'm taking a look at this, Apple stock is actually the first stock that I've ever bought in my Robinhood account, and I actually dollar cost averaged a lot of this throughout December, so I bought a pretty significant amount. One share, another share, another share, 4 shares on the 5th, 4 shares on the 9th, 7 shares on the 16th, 9 shares on December 17th, 2 shares on December 17th, another 6 on the 13th of January, and then January 28th, another 7 shares, and then I got my dividend as well. But I'm showing this transaction history because I want to give you an idea of the portfolio that I had at this point in time. So as of then, I purchased 1 share of Microsoft, I bought a lot of Apple stock, and then I bought a lot of VOO. So at that point in time, we had 3 stocks in the portfolio, 2 of them being major positions. And then finally, as you can see here, we have Tesla stock. This was my first entry in purchasing this stock, and I bought 2 shares on February 4th at a value of $946.67 per share. I even bought another 4 shares on top of those 2 on the same exact day. Then on March 6th, I bought some, and then I continued to buy a little bit more as well. I've only sold 1 Tesla share in my full history of owning the stock, and that's when we had the stock market crash, and I paid like $364, as you can see, pre-split, and sold it at $420. I thought it was going to be a bounce. I speculated on the short-term movements. Keep in mind, it was really negative looking for the stock market back then, and I thought it was going to drop even more. So I tried to make a short-term play on this, and obviously didn't turn out well, and I've learned a major lesson from that. I've never sold another Tesla share since then, and I've also learned so much about Tesla stock since that March 19th date as well. I know way more than I knew back then. I started to buy a little bit more Microsoft stock later on. I swing traded with some shares on Virgin Galactic, made a couple thousand on that, I believe. The reason that I'm showing you all some of these transactions that I made is to kind of give you a visual idea of what the portfolio looked like. So for the most part, I owned Microsoft stock, 1 share for a while until at least around that time of the crash, and then I owned Tesla stock, which was a pretty decent amount. Then I owned VOO, which was a large amount, and then I owned some Apple, which was actually one of the best performers in my portfolio for a long time until I sold it. So with that, at the most, it was around a 4-stock portfolio, almost a 3-stock portfolio, with Microsoft being a very insignificant part of the portfolio for a while. But my goal with this, even from the very beginning, I bought VOO as kind of the diversification aspect of the portfolio, and that lump of that VOO ETF that I owned was actually intended to act as sort of a hedge against the rest of my positions, which, as you can tell from the portfolio, they were pretty concentrated. And then I bought Apple and Tesla stock and that slight bit of Microsoft as well, because I thought, okay, these are growth stocks. There's some massive potential for growth out of these in the future, and I'm going to try something different. I'm going to have a concentrated portfolio rather than simply diversifying, because I really need to grow my wealth tremendously if I want to reach my goal for the long term. So that's something to take note of as well. I learned a lot from that purchase that I made with the mutual funds back in October, and I decided to try this concentration strategy, and for the longest time I had this strategy and it worked out very well for me. And I learned that although we commonly hear that recommendation of diversification, concentration can actually work out very well in one's favor if you do make the right choices on those stock picks in that concentrated portfolio. And in my scenario, I made some pretty solid choices, and as you can see later on May 22nd, I ended up selling my ETF VOO, and I sold that whole position. I took a $2,000 loss on it because my gut instincts were that, okay, the main reason I bought this stock in the first place is because I commonly hear that recommendation of diversification. However, so far this has worked out well for me, and I think I've discovered something that goes along with my risk tolerance, and it also grows my portfolio with concentration more than simply just owning a stock like VOO, which averages around like 10% per year. And I thought about that with my gut instincts, and I realized really the only reason that I own VOO was for that sake of diversification, and we commonly hear that recommendation from people to buy index funds and just hold them long term, and you hear it preached as if it's 100% fact. And I learned through experience that that is simply not the set in stone law. It's not always the case for everyone, and I can see why they recommend diversification and buying index funds, because for every investor out there, not every single one of them is going to have that ideal mindset for the concentration strategy. You could have some investors that are buying stocks that are really not good stocks or not good long-term stocks that won't grow very well and work out well in that concentration strategy. So I can see why people just commonly recommend diversification, because for your typical investor who is not going to do some research on their stocks, then buying index funds may be best for them. But I learned in my scenario that concentration was actually a strategy that worked for me, and I could handle it with my risk tolerance, because I would much rather have my portfolio grow significantly. And I realized that I had no problem stomaching the losses on the red days if that meant that on the green days I could have some really nice movements and growth with a portfolio. And I think that my risk tolerance played a big role in this decision for concentration rather than diversification. And keep in mind, nothing that I say in this video is to be considered financial advice. I'm simply sharing what worked out for me and how I came to the current portfolio value that we're at. But as I stated, concentration turned out to be a really good strategy for me, and I realized that diversification isn't the only way to go about investing. In certain scenarios, concentration can be good, like in my situation where I have a high risk tolerance and I trust my judgment on the stocks that I pick, and I'm willing to risk all of those stocks performing poorly and my portfolio going down a lot. But addressing the events that unfolded after selling VOO at a loss, keep in mind, like I said, I've already made so much more than what I would have gained if I would have just held VOO and not bought Tesla stock and not bought Microsoft stock with it. But I did eventually sell Microsoft stock, and if we take a look at that one, we will check out the date that I sold on that. I can't even remember exactly, but as you can see, on August 21st, I sold around half of my shares of Microsoft, and I think I made around like a 30% gain at that point in time. And then on August 26th and the 27th, I ended up selling the rest of that, and I invested every single bit of it into Tesla stock. And after around that period of time in August, all that was remaining in my portfolio was Apple stock and Tesla stock. And as you can see, on September 9th, I ended up selling all of my Apple stock. Keep in mind, I didn't buy any more Apple stock after this January 28th date, and I actually just held that initial position for a long time. I think I made really good gains on it, like 60 to 80%, somewhere in there, like really nice gains. At some points it was outperforming my Tesla position, but as you can see, I sold all of this. I made a really nice profit on this, and I bought Tesla stock with the funds from this stock being sold. Another thing to add on top of this as well, aside from me just selling old positions to buy more Tesla stock, from about May until now of this year, I've pretty much purchased nothing but Tesla stock. That's where all of my income from this year has been focused on since about that time of May until right now. And with me selling Microsoft and Apple stock, keep in mind that was me gradually coming around to this idea of my high conviction around Tesla stock. I knew that owning a single stock was very risky, and that it takes a lot of high conviction, discipline, and things like that to follow through with just owning a single stock and not worrying when we have movements like this right here, where it takes a huge dip and sometimes it dropped like 22% in one day. I've lost over like $28,000 in one day with Tesla stock, but I simply continued to hold. And I realized that I already had a lot of experience with my concentration strategy with a portfolio, with me owning either like 4 stocks at once or 3 stocks at once. And as I continued to sell my stocks and sell Microsoft, and once I got around to the point where it was simply just Tesla and Apple, I finally decided to make that decision to go all in on Tesla stock. And keep in mind, I think Apple is a fantastic company. If I wasn't buying Tesla stock right now, it would definitely be up there in terms of my choices. But with this portfolio, there was just a gradual evolution in which it finally turned out with me putting all of my money in Tesla stock, because I had high conviction towards the future of this company. And I still continue to be more confident than ever about the future of this company. And that is just simply as I learned more and more about Tesla stock over time. As you can see, my position has really gone up over this second half of the year. And as this time went on over the year, I learned so much about investing, and I learned so much about Tesla stock. I would say my learning has almost been at an exponential growth rate when I compare it to where I was at the beginning of the year, and especially back in October of 2019. But one thing I can say is, even at the early stages of investing, I knew the basics of, for the most part, not trying to time the market, buying companies and holding them for the long term. And keep in mind, the only reason that I sold off the other companies had nothing to do with the fundamentals or anything like that for the companies that I own, but it was simply that I was looking for higher growth, and I was realizing and becoming more comfortable with the idea of concentration, because I knew that I was making good decisions in the market and buying the right companies. And I finally became more and more confident to own Tesla stock and have it be the only stock in my portfolio. And because of this, and because of me owning only Tesla stock, especially this last half of the year, I've been able to grow my portfolio significantly. And even with not the last half of the year, I still made a lot of money on these other investments as well. The only big loss that I can really remember was me losing that money with VOO, which I purposefully took a loss on because I knew there was a lot of opportunity with Tesla stock and with getting some gains out of Microsoft as well. So in the end, most of the decisions that I can think of that I made this year actually turned out very well for me. And all of this knowledge was simply gained through experience. And I think that's the best way to learn with investing, other than knowing like the general rules, like trying to avoid timing the market, being a long-term investor and things like that. However, I eventually learned, as you can see, to just kind of go against the grain and throw out that idea of diversification, at least for my personal risk tolerance and situation, in which I did a lot of research on Tesla stock over this past year. And my conviction grew and grew and grew until I was finally confident enough to go all in on this stock. So I just wanted to explain some of my progress over this past year of investing and how I was able to really grow this portfolio. I don't think people realize that this is actually game-changing money for me. Like, this is a big deal, and I've kind of gotten a little bit used to it over time just as I take a look at the portfolio every day, but it's still a really big deal even with me looking at it right now. And the reason that I make videos like these is to encourage others out there to begin investing. And I'm not saying try my investing strategies. Learn for yourself, learn your own strategies, do research, do your due diligence when it comes to investing. But I think that investing is one of the greatest things out there, and I really believe it's one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. And I'm confident that because of my decisions, I'm going to be able to live comfortably in the future and not have to worry as much about money and things like that. And I also want to make sure I set up my family tree in the future. If I do end up having a family, I want to make sure that that's not a concern, but I still want to teach a lot of the values that I've learned over my life, because hardship has provided a lot of benefits to me in terms of me learning how the world works and actually struggling, and then that struggle being used as motivation for me to try really hard so I can grow my wealth in the future and do well and enjoy life and be financially independent and things like that. So I think my hardships have definitely played a positive role in helping me be more successful and making good decisions and learning things in life. So as always, of course, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to smash that like button. I don't feel like I said everything as perfectly as I would like to have said it, and I probably missed a lot of few things, and I may cover this in the future again if you all want me to redo one later on. But I hope the point has been made in this video has been useful somehow in terms of just me learning this concentration strategy over time and learning that there are other ways to invest other than just simply what we hear commonly recommended by some people, like diversifying for the sake of diversifying. And in certain scenarios, like with my scenario, if you have high conviction, a high risk tolerance, and you've done your own research, then it can actually turn out well for someone like myself who is comfortable making decisions and having a strategy like this. But this is certainly not a recommendation for anyone to do what I'm doing. I'm definitely not recommending anyone to just buy a single stock and do what I did, because that's very, very risky, and that's how you can lose your whole life savings. And I don't want that to happen to anyone. So anything that I say in this video is not to be considered financial advice, and I'm just sharing my experiences and what I've learned from me that applies to me personally. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and feel free to check out Robinhood and Webull in the description below. With Robinhood, you can get a free stock, and with Webull right now, you can get 4 free stocks in total, 2 valued up to $250 just for signing up with my referral link, and then another 2 valued up to $1,600 for depositing $100 into your Webull account. And you should be able to take that $100 right back out after you get your free stocks. That's what I did, and it worked for me. And it also helps support the channel when you use my referral link, which I really appreciate. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.